Welcome back, friends. We are just under 2 weeks from the launch of Persona 5X, or if you're catching this later in the future, it might already be out. And I want to give you kind of a no-frills beginner guide to the game to get you started on the best path forward and to kind of warn you about certain things that you want to focus on or not focus on, just so you have a really good, enjoyable start. If you're new to gacha games, this is really for you. If you have experience in gacha games, a lot of these things are going to sound familiar or you'll have experience with from other games. That's perfectly fine. There's probably still a couple of tips that will be relevant to you, so I do encourage you to still watch the video. I'm going to give two caveats to this series or video, whatever. The first is I'm recording this on my KR account, which means you're going to see, events and characters and things that just aren't going to be available at launch and probably for some time thereafter. Just ignore those. They're not going to be relevant to what we're discussing today. Just know they'll come in the future if you're seeing them pop up on screen. The other thing is, as of recording this, there's been no official announcements as to what the first batch of events are. We can assume certain things just because of the way the game plays out, and we'll talk about those things later. But if there's a major shift in events that comes out as the game launches, I'll make a follow-up video, something short, something sweet, that just lets you know to, hey, maybe pivot here or there. But I'm pretty confident that what I'm going to talk about today is general enough to get you a really great start. And speaking of great starts, I would love if we start this video with a sub and a like from you. And with that, let's kick things off. So the first thing that you want to do in the game, you're going to have to as you start anyways, is really you want to progress the story. Now, I'm not just talking about the first, few minutes of the game with cutscenes and things like that. I'm talking about really pushing the story pretty far into the first palace. So let me head over there. I'm not going to go into the palace. I just want to kind of show you where it starts. Because the palace itself is what unlocks a lot of the initial kind of features. So as you get into the first palace, you'll start, kind of in Mementos, and honestly, that's like the first couple seconds of the game that comes in the trailer, so I'm not really spoiling anything there. And then just like, Persona 5, you go into palaces. I'm not going to give you the story there. But ultimately, the first palace for quite a ways serves really as a tutorial of sorts. And it's through this that you open quite a few features, and obviously very important features, that the game offers. So if you kind of get distracted and go off to the side and try all of these other things too early, you're really hurting yourself because you won't unlock certain things. And so to name a few of the things that you're going to unlock by going through that first palace, first of all is going to be your dailies. So the ability to, get these extra rewards, gems every day, use your stamina, things like that. Which also progresses your track here, which is a ton of great rewards. This is basically like your battle pass that all gacha games have these days. You also don't start being able to use your weapons. And so it's later into the first palace that you actually get the chance to equip weapons. So that's a huge power spike and something that you pull for in banners. And so you obviously want to use them. So you got to progress for that. You also, and I'll have to throw a different screen up in editing, but there's a contract thing up top here. I've completed mine, but you'll see it in the screenshot. And this is kind of like a beginner's journey, book that you go through that takes you pretty far through the game. And again, lots of great rewards in there. We're talking weapons, personas, pulls. I think you even get to pull a free 5-star weapon. I want to say there's even like a 4-star selector in there at some point, or maybe it was a limited 5-star. I can't fully remember. But that's a huge piece that you want to be able to do. And then you also have things like the Velvet Trials. So again, if I pop over into the metaverse here, this piece here opens up as you're progressing the story, and this has just a ton of rewards you're going to want. So I would say the first kind of major breakpoint is going to be your dailies and your weapons. Definitely progress the story to get there, meet a couple people, things like that. And that's really the first thing you want to deeply focus on. Now, coming off this story, you're probably looking at the franchise and saying, oh, well, when do I open up the cool characters? How do I get such and such person? Things like that. So first of all, you're going to get certain people through the story. So your main party comes just at certain chapters within the story itself. You don't have to worry about pulling them. You can pull them. You can pull dupes. Matter of fact, I've pulled people before I got them in the story itself, but you don't have to worry about them. They're just going to come into your roster. And frankly, in the early game, you don't really have to do much pulling if you don't want to, if nobody interests you right away. Now, the first banner is likely to be Joker. That was how it launched in the other regions, and there's events that will come, likely at the start of the game. I'd be incredibly surprised if they don't, that center around the Phantom Thieves. and he's just leading it off. I mean, he's the, the main star of Persona 5. He's the face of the franchise, and it'd be weird if they shifted that around. And so as far as pulling characters go, as a beginner, there's a few things that you're going to want to know. And I touched on this a little bit in another video, so I'm not going to go super in depth here, but there's going to be multiple banner types. One that you won't see on my screen now is the beginner banner. It comes at a discount. So if I look at the characters here, it's normally 10 cards to pull. And actually it's going to use this currency here, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Either way, whatever currency it uses, it's only going to be 8. And I'll put a screen up here, but once you get to, I think it's 50 pulls, you get to select from Ryuji, Morgana, and Anne. Now, I personally would recommend, if you're not pulling on the limited banner, which is likely again to be Joker, to go for Anne. She is an amazing DPS. She's still relevant in the game today, and she honestly would do a lot of good things for you for a very, very long time to come. It's likely what I'm gonna do. That, or I'd maybe go for Morgana, just because he's another healer. He also has like some, good wind damage, things like that. He's not like the top tier, super triple, quadruple ST0 kind of a character, but I still use him today. I have him in different comps when I need multiple teams and things like that, and I just happen to like the character. So you're fine with that. Ryuji is the hardest one to build for. He needs characters that help him, so unless you're a huge Ryuji fan, I don't know that I would pick him first. But either way, focus your first pulls on that banner, because it's coming at a discount, and you're guaranteeing that you're going to get yourself a 5-star. Really nothing to argue there. The second thing you're going to have is the standard banner. So the standard character banner will give you all the non-limited characters as a chance to pull, and after their debut banners, they end up in this banner. So what I would say here is there's going to be a counter for 0 out of 300, and once you hit 300, again, you get to pick from a certain selection of characters, and I'll throw a screen up here of what that looks like. And you can choose, who your favorite is here, or, there'll be other guides of characters that I'll help make, and that might help you inform your decision. But ultimately, you're kind of slowly accumulating to get there over time. That said, I don't know that I would rush the 300. You're going to get a lot of pulls by playing the game, especially in palaces. But if you rush the 300, you're kind of missing out on future standard characters that are really, really strong that will end up in the banner. For example, there's a healer called Miriam. She is one that I'm looking forward to pulling. There's going to eventually be a Navi, so a navigator, that ends up in there. And you just, over time, they just add more and more and more. And so I personally think it's more impactful to wait a little bit. In the early game, honestly, if you're pulling, for example, on, at that first banner, if you're going for Joker and his, you're going to have good damage dealers to begin with. And the other characters you're getting to start with are going to be good. And you can do a few pulls in there and kind of get things started, but I wouldn't try to blow, 300 pulls in the first few weeks to, get that select. I think it's not the best use of your currency. The other thing is going to be your limited banners. And so limited banners come in 2 varieties currently, and we're all hoping it launches this way, but there's been no confirmation. We didn't used to have the 2 styles of pulling. Again, I cover this deeper in another video, but my short version of that's going to be, if they have both of these types of banners, make sure to pull on this one that's out of 110, because that guarantees you the character when you pull a 5-star. Even if you have to go all the way to pity, you're not wasting, a 50-50 chance, which is what this one does, at 80 pulls. Again, there's more nuance to it. Go check my other videos. But if you're pulling for Joker, whoever that first banner is, I would very much recommend pulling here. And then the final piece is you're going to have to make a decision on whether or not you want to pull their weapon. I'll have guides on different characters as they come out and whether or not I think their weapons are worth it as we cover those individuals. But if you're going to want the weapon and it's a limited character, this is where you get it. You can't buy it from like a weapon shop in the game or anything like that. So just know if you want a complete character, maybe you're a collectionist, or maybe you just really want it for the power spike, that this is where you're going to end up pulling it. So, just kind of recapping quickly, as a beginner, do your beginner banner. That's going to give you a selector and it's at a discounted rate. Super good value. Absolutely recommend going all the way on that one. If you haven't pulled a decent roster and doing that, maybe throw a few pulls here. There is a pity rate. I think it's 80. And let me see here. I'll actually pull up. Yeah, so at 80, you're guaranteed a 5-star. So maybe go for one of those, maybe 2. Keep in mind, you might get a dupe. So if you picked, Morgana on the beginner selection, there's nothing saying you won't pull him on this other banner. but maybe get a character, maybe two off of that, but don't really push your luck to 300 just yet. And then if you're going limited, go for the guarantee. It's just mathematically better for you. And once you have your pulls, really the next question is going to be, how do I build? How do I progress these characters? Maybe you've got a stable of people and you've got these, great Phantom Thieves or whatever that you want to level. Well, how do you do that? So if I go into my characters here, there's really a couple things. I'll actually, start with Wonder here. So Wonder's level is tied to your account level. An account level can be seen like here. So you'll see mine is S level 27. That means I've hit 80 and then kept leveling after that. But your characters will be capped at how high they can level based on your account level. So for example, I think it's like at level 10, maybe I can level them up to 20. At 20, I can level them to 30, things like that. And then Wonder is just whatever level he is as you progress the account level. So the first thing to know is you're not going to start on day one, get a bunch of materials and jump Joker all the way up to level 80. You have to progress your account to get there. And that's kind of nice because it gives you natural breakpoints to say, oh, right now I'm not going to hit that level 50 mark for, maybe weeks. And that means I can kind of push my characters to that and then save resources or build another character. Is going to be up to you. And you're not instantly, stressed about trying to get everybody to level 80 all at the same time. That would happen if you went to, say, one of the other servers right now, and that can be kind of stressful. But you can take it a little bit easier at the start. The second thing is you honestly don't need to level everybody. I have quite a few 80s just because I've been on this account for a while. But then if you notice, I have a lot of level 1s. I get a level 10, a level 30. There's characters I just didn't level because I didn't feel the need in the content. And early on, the first couple palaces, you can beat with the default teams they give you. And like many gacha games, you're going to be forced to do a couple pulls anyways. And so you're going to have teams to use. And those teams will serve you just fine if you're like, I don't really love this group of people and I'm waiting for this other character to come out. You might be able to give it some time. Now, if you're waiting for the Persona 3 collab that came out a year later, you might have to do some pulls before then. But at least to start, you don't have to get crazy with building everybody on your roster. Now, once you do decide who you want to build, let's pick someone who's not necessarily fully leveled here. There's a few things that you have to do to progress your character. The first one, and I'm going to kind of order this in the way that I think you should focus your characters. The first one is your character level itself. And so you need a couple things to level your character. One is EXP materials. So you get those in various places we'll talk about later. And you also need kind of like breakthrough materials. So you'll see here that my Mont is, capped. I can't add an EXP material for her. But if I were to use one of these, matter of fact, I'm just going to do it for the sake of the video. Now I've given her a breakthrough. She can now go from level 50 to level 60. And if I wanted to, I can use my EXP materials. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to exit out there. I can use my EXP materials to get her up there. Now, obviously, I've got a bunch of stuff saved here. You're not going to have millions of these to do this for every character right away, but that would be how you level. And then I would consume these, break through again, consume these, break through again. And then next up, after leveling your character, I would say to level your weapons. And here's something cool that I didn't know when I first started the game. Your levels transfer. So right now, check this out. I've got a level 50, sword over here. Take this level 1. If I switched her into this level 1, less rarity weapon, that's going to become level 50. So even if you're at the lowest rarity weapon, don't be afraid to level it, because when you get that next tier up, maybe through the story or through pulling or whatever, and you switch into it, that weapon is automatically going to become that same level. So you haven't wasted anything. You can swap weapons out, that attach to your character. Same thing here. To level these, you need breakthrough materials. So this would work the same as what I just showed you for EXP. I could break this weapon and then it goes up to level 60, and then it's a different currency to level up the weapon. So weapons, personas, cards, character levels, they all use a different kind of currency. So in importance of power, go for your character level, then go for your weapon. That's the second piece. And then after the weapon, that's when you want to think about your skills. So your skills going to be down here, and skills are tough. So be careful. You don't want to necessarily level everything up fully, because it takes a lot of materials, and you're going to find on certain characters, there's certain, powers that you really just don't use that often or at all. For example, on, I very, very rarely use her single target attack. So if I go into her, once it swaps, you know, she's got these attacks here, and she's really meant to be AoE damage. And so she has a single target damage move that, I mean, I barely use this thing. And so it's one of the last things I would level up on her. And it's a good way to save resources by kind of picking and choosing what you actually use the character for. So really think about that, or check guides. I'll have guides, other content creators already have guides or will have guides. So there's going to be plenty of information out there for specific characters to help you know how to use them, who to team them up with, things like that. But after you've focused on their weapons, you do want to come in here and level, certain key skills. The other kind of warning on skills I'll give you is, if it's a character that you think you're going to use short term but not long term, don't push this skill all the way up to level 10. You're going to consume way too many resources, and some of those upper level resources above, like I think level 6, get more and more scarce, especially the 9 to 10 breakthrough. And so you really want to be careful who's getting like max skills. Someone like Joker, who you're probably going to use forever, prime candidate to use, your mats on. Someone else who maybe, you phase out early and, maybe you're going to use Riddle and then drop her midway through the game. Don't bring her to 10, right? And maybe you will, but I'm just using that as an example. So character, weapon, then skills. And then, oops, I backed out too far. And then the final piece, or actually it's not the final piece. And so then the next piece is going to be their card sets. This is effectively their gear. This is not something you need to focus on right away at all. I would say this really comes more into play from like maybe level 60 and up as far as getting really good cards and sets. And this upper set, or this upper card up here, is very limited in what you can get. So even that comes later. That comes through like guild trials and things like that. But you'll get lower rarity cards. I wouldn't overinvest. What I would tell you to do is, if you're stuck at a particular spot in the game, you're like, I could beat this. I just feel like I'm, getting one shot. Or maybe, I could just use a little bit more damage. If you've already done your character level, you've already done your weapon and put some, points into your skills, then come to the cards and do a little bit at a time. Don't go straight to the max level. Go to level 5, go to level 10, go to level 15, and see if that's making a noticeable difference. And also make sure with your cards that you're pulling sets together. Like right here, I've got a 4-piece set, so I'm getting all this additional, effects and things. If I put 4 random cards on here that don't match, well, now I'm not getting these extra, blessing damage, crit chance, highlight damage, things like that. So you do want to build sets for your character. And off the top of my head, I can't think of a single character that doesn't want a 4 set. Like I can't think of anyone who wants a 2 set and a 2 set or something like that. Maybe there's a couple out there, but generally speaking, you're going to be going for, 4 of the same types of cards across your different, sets, the sun, moon, star, and planet here. So you would build those last, and I would not say that you have to worry about it early game. Throw some random stuff on there as you get into mementos and things like that, but don't overinvest until you're getting into those yellow rarities, kind of like more towards the level 60 plus ranges. And then finally, I don't know if this will be here at launch or not. There's some that say they will, some that don't think it will. But in a later feature from the other servers, you have the Astro Globe Trials, whatever they're called. And that brought this kind of character progression piece. These mats are far more limited. The stars that level this up aren't quite as bad, but then all of these here require beating some much harder content, the harder content in the game really. And so these ones you really have to be particularly mindful of who you spend them on. But this is much later. If they open it at the start of the game, I'll do it on characters I know I'm going to keep, like, Joker, or, eventually when Futaba comes out, she's always going to be in my parties. So, I'll use it on characters like that. But I'm not going to dump these, heavily into those early units that, get phased out for, power creep and stuff like that. Again, there's going to be 1,000 guides out there for every character. I'll have some, others will have some, so we'll help you with this. But this is the last piece and the last thing you should focus on. And even then, again, it didn't come out for the other servers until we were well into the, post 80 game. And we were fine for a long time without it. So if it is coming early, it's really just a power spike, and one that you probably don't need for the first few palaces. But that's character progression for like your party members. Wonder is a slight bit different. For Wonder, you'll notice a lot less icons. Again, his character level is tied to your count level, so that's just in sync. He does have the same weapon leveling mechanic, so you can level his weapons. And his weapons you'll sub out based on what teams you have. We can cover that in a different video. And instead of having persona skill or regular skills like we leveled up on others, he's really tied to the personas that you attach to him. So you'll see like this party that I have right now has 3 different personas, and effectively he's going to inherit some of their stats in battle. And that's going to, help him with his HP, his DPS, whatever his resistance is. And he also has his own skill tree. So for Wonder, when you talk about character progression, you're really talking about what personas you're building for him, unlocking as many personas as you can. And then as you unlock them, you get these points up here, these different, icons or whatever, and those are used to fill out your tree. I'll do, a deeper guide later as to the whys, but effectively what you want to focus on Wonder is these 2 skills down here first. These are what give you your, your skill ups for your personas and their particular powers. Then this one is kind of like the one you want to do last. And then you can kind of just see on my screen like what you prioritize in terms of stats. Again, I'll cover that in depth later. This is meant to be a little bit more comprehensive and shorter, but that's, high level what you want to do for him. And for him, what you really want to do is any time that you open up like another level tier. So for example, tier, 1 through 10 is like what you start with, and you go from 10 to 20, 20 to 30, you get these kind of 10 block chunks. That's where you want to come into the metaverse and see if you can run missions to open up new personas. So for example, when you're, rank 1 up to rank 2, this is what you can build. And so you want to make sure you unlock them. Some you can unlock just naturally playing the game, but I would come in here and, use some stamina and open these up every time I get these, because it's given me more of those materials that let me build let me build Wonder's skill tree, which is just giving him stats. It's giving him power boost, things like that. So he may progress in his own way, but it's really through this persona system / skill build system, skill tree or whatever you have. So progress wise for him, again, just summing it up, levels tied to character level. Can't do anything about that, but play the game. Build his weapon, make sure it's leveled. I level his basically as soon as I can, and then build his weapons as you get them. And then focus on your personas, spend some stamina in here, things like that. And then in the Velvet Room, you can fuse other personas, and we could make a whole different guide on persona fusion. I've covered it a bit in my other videos, but basically anything that's going to grant you a persona, you want to make that a priority to get him boosted in power. All right, so you have pulled your characters, you know how to progress them, you've got a strategy in mind. Where do you get all of these materials? Well, the materials come from a lot of sources, thankfully, and this is one of those ways that I think the game can be fairly free-to-play friendly. So first of all, as you go through the palaces, you're going to get things in drops, you're going to break objects, and they're going to give you some stuff. You're going to get, level up material, weapon material, sometimes weapons, things like that. So just going through the story, you're going to get quite a few things just rolling through. Next to that, Mementos is one of the best places to get materials. So you're going to see here, I'll just show you the Area 1 map. You can drive yourself around this entire place just like Persona 5, and there's going to be all sorts of destructibles, there's going to be all sorts of enemies, things like that. And you get a ton of resources going through here and finishing it off. Additionally, actually with the palaces, I'll show you another little feature here. You'll notice that mine are all 100%, except for I haven't done the newest dungeon, so I'm saving it for global. And as you go through the palaces, if I go, let's see, I think it's up here. Yes, you can see like I've unlocked all the treasure chests, all the areas, beat all the harder bosses. And as I do this, as I get to this 100% mark, check out all the stuff I'm getting. I'm getting account XP, which helps level the account / Wonder. I'm getting, books to level up my characters, weapon materials, persona materials, inspiration, which is how I get certain skills on Wonder, things like that. You get weapons. So, you're getting a lot of incentive to come through here, not to mention gems to pull, more personas. So on top of just getting it naturally through treasure chests and stuff in the palace, you're also filling this out, which is going to give you all the materials that you really want to start collecting. So it is worth going back and 100%ing your palaces. A question I get quite a bit is, oh, but are the palaces gone after you finish them, just like Persona 5? And the answer is no. So there will be things that progress the story, and then they'll explain that to you. But just know that eventually you can go back if you want to go back and 100% it later. Not a big deal. I didn't fully 100% until much, much later. Although I think on this playthrough, I'm going to do it as I'm actually in the palace. But know that you can go back if you miss it. And then Mementos, also has another kind of additional thing. So not only do you get everything as you're driving around and, completing the zone, but you've got this, I guess, ATM looking thing. And unfortunately, I can't scroll back and show everything that I've pulled. But if you just look at this last rank here for this one I'm on, again, I'm getting gems, I'm getting protagonist XP. In this case, I got some clothes. I guess in all these cases, I got a weapon from one of them. And along the way, getting to these ranks, I was getting level up materials, gems, things like that. So again, you're getting things from your treasure chest or whatever, and your enemies, but then you're also getting, I guess, milestones as you rank these things up. So if you're focusing on the palace mementos, you're getting what you need to build characters. And the best part is it costs you no stamina. So if you've used your stamina on your dailies, cool, awesome. Come over here and crank this stuff out. You're gonna get a ton of things for doing so. And it's one of the best places until you complete them to really kind of boost your account up. Another place that you're gonna get a lot of materials is just through events. So at the start of the game, there's likely to be kind of like a Phantom Thief event. And again, as you go through that, you're gonna get rewards for completing the events, both in the gameplay experience itself with like treasure chests and stuff, but then also they tend to give you, various rewards as you go through it. And so let's see if I can, find here. So it's not going to show me. Oh, they actually did. So if you see down here, these are given like gems and stuff for completing them. And down at the bottom, you'll see it's giving you an example of all the different kinds of rewards you can get. And so all the events have something like this, where by doing, milestones or getting to a certain point in the event, you're going to get like, XP, you're going to get, weapon materials, pool currency, things like that. So focus on whatever events are out there, especially if they're time limited. And then basically every event, I can't think of any off the top of my head that didn't have them, also has a shop. And so again, if I were to come here, you're going to see this currency that I could get for playing, these missions or whatever. And I can trade those in for basically anything, right? So I've got, coins, which you use to pull, weapons. I've got, this is the level, from level 9 to 10 for your skills, cards, or, basically the gear sets, level breaking materials. These are materials for leveling skills, etc., etc. And so if you're focusing down the event, you're going to get currency, and you can come in here and try to clear out these shops. And because these events are limited, it really does become kind of a priority to get these shops clean, because it's just extra materials you're not going to get in between events. And then yet another place to get materials is going to be in your dailies. So every day you get so much stamina you can use, and it refills, I think it's like 1 every 4 minutes. It's not translating at the moment. I think it's something like that. But if you come in here, you can spend stamina to target farm certain things. Now, not everything in here I think is worth farming for, but let's say you were trying to push a character up to level 30 and you ran out of books. You could come in here and spend your stamina that day farming out those books. And as your character, level grows, as your account level grows, you'll open up harder stages that just give you better rewards. So you can kind of see up here, the rewards we get for that level versus, level 1, it's, a lot less and things like that, which is, again, standard kind of gacha fare. But it's a place that you can target farm when you're running low on something, and maybe you've done some of the other content, or maybe you just don't have time to do the other content and you've got time to just blow through your dailies, and you want to come in here and just use your stamina to get through it for the day. You can target farm specific materials, again, for weapons, personas, etc. So another great place to get these resources. And then there's also, so I can tell you, there's a lot of places you can get this. There's also going to be, special shops. And so these come with the different game modes, and all the different game modes basically have special currency that's specific to those. So like this is pull currency. When you pull from, the banners, you get these extra coins. I can buy, more pulls. I can buy materials, things like that. You can buy weapons, and this again is from another mode. Different modes will give you, persona coins, so you can buy duplicates or whatever. Again, in here you can see just all the different things you can buy. And I'm not going to walk through every single one of these today. We can do a different video for shops. But just know that as you're kind of going through completing different parts of the game, you're likely building up a currency. And if you come into this little icon here, that's the store icon for like in-game currencies. And there's plenty of things that you can buy. These are for like the My Palace and things like that. And so as you go through and complete things, check those shops first before you go worrying about like where to blow your stamina. You might actually have a ton of this currency, you just didn't realize it. but you can get a lot of materials there as well. And then another place you're going to get them is just from doing your dailies. So as you do this, again, you're going to see different things. And something a lot of people miss is these souvenir packages. As you clear it, you're going to get these packages, but they actually go in your inventory. They don't automatically consume. And so you do have to come into your bag here. And then if I scroll down, you're going to see I've got a souvenir. And if I use it, this time I got a currency for leveling a skill, or in my next one, this is parts for a weapon. You can do, max and do them all at the same time, it's whatever. But you do sometimes end up with special items in your inventory. So do check that every now and again, especially for these souvenirs, because that's going to, again, it's going to boost your stuff. You're also going to occasionally get like the cards. And so you could see how many I have saved up right now. I could go in here and pick, one of the card sets. And if I pick this one, why not? Now I've got this card, right? So pop in your inventory. I think people forget that sometimes things will store up in here. Some modes even give you like, I can get a 4-star. Now every one of my 4 stars is max, so this is kind of useless to me. But when you're new or you're just, starting out in those first few months, I can promise you don't have every one of these maxed. You might have a free character sitting there waiting for you. So materials are literally everywhere. But as a beginner, from a priority standpoint, here's the order I'm going to tell you to do it in. First of all, go through your dailies if you have stamina burn. Second of all, palace, push your palace, get that to 100%, get everything inside of there. Do mementos, same thing, push that entire completion ranking, get all the little, ATM level up rewards or whatever you want to call those things. Do your events, make sure that if they're time bound, that you're focused on those time bound events. You don't want to get to a place where you've, left all of this on the table and you don't have time to complete it, or you don't have enough days to farm it, things like that. And then check your shops as you build these currencies. And just see if there's things you need to buy, or if you need to blow through, event currency before it goes away. Another great place. So for this last part, I'm going to cover 2 things really, and I'm going to tie them together a bit. It's what do I do with my stamina? So stamina is a limited resource that again refills, so much per minute. And if you're a Gacha veteran, you know full well what that is. But if you're coming in here from like a traditional console gaming and you don't know what that is, then this part is for you. And then also what to focus on daily so that you're getting kind of maximum rewards. So on the stamina front, here's what I would say. First of all, sometimes there's limited events that require the use of stamina, and you just have to play it by ear. It's not every event, but when they do, it's typically something like, use up to 3 chances a day to get these materials, or stuff like that. So when that is happening, that is always tied to a shop. And so again, this is where you're going to get special currencies. So if an event is running during that content cycle and it requires stamina, that's your focus. Make sure you're doing whatever it takes to finish that event, finish out the shop, because when that event goes away, so do those rewards. Get that done first. At a certain point in the game, you'll get an extra icon here where you get to fight bosses again. I'm not going to click in there. You can already see this one, unfortunately, but I don't want to be a spoiler for everything. But you have a limited amount of extra boss chances per week. So this resets every week. And so I tend to prioritize getting those done because they give you really good materials for like leveling your skills. Definitely at the higher levels because it gives you some of the more rare materials. So that's really the second place that I focus my stamina when there's not an event that's using it all up. After that, I like to come in and make sure that I'm focused on my new personas. So again, this kind of comes down to, in the early game, just a few. So it's as you hit that next, 10 block ranking. So when you hit level 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, etc. And I will come in here and make sure I have everybody. Even if I don't plan on using them, that's a key thing. Because I can tell you, I've probably never put this guy in my team, not once. But by unlocking him, I get points to build Wonder's skill tree. So super important to get them. I even sometimes go for duplicates so then I can use them in Fusion. We'll talk about Fusion more in depth in a different video, and I think I've covered in some other ones. But ultimately, stamina is used to get these ones specifically here, and I make sure that I've got at least 1 copy of every one of these unlocked. So that's my next priority. Then I kind of just move it down the list of, well, if I've got this going here, maybe I want to burn my stamina. You really should burn your stamina every day. Then am I building a character and what are they missing? So if I, can't level up, for example, because I can't do a skill breakthrough, I'll come in here and then do a breakthrough on the character so I can hit that next, 10 block leveling. Or maybe I've broken them through, but I don't have the books to level them. Cool. I'll come down here and get the books. Then I'll move on to weapons, etc. But I run it as a priority and I focus on my main team first. I don't try to spread these resources too thin, and you should not either, because eventually that well does dry up, especially after you've finished all the palaces, finished all mementos, things like that. And so I would focus on my main team first. I would identify a secondary team that I use a lot, or characters that I can swap in and out of teams a lot, like navigators or healers, things like that. And I would focus them down and keep them, kind of current on levels and weapons and things like that. Then if I've done all that, maybe you're starting on day one, you're months into the game, then I would start thinking about, well, what do I need to stockpile? Maybe I don't really have anything I need a lot of use for right now, but I know I'm eventually going to pull another character. And when I do, I know I'm going to need breakthrough materials. So then I'll come in here and kind of work those down, things like that. That will carry you up to about level 60. When you hit level 60, that's when farming these starts becoming a bit more, I guess, worth it. I would never try to focus down a lower rarity. So let's see. Yeah, let me just double check. I'm pretty sure it's at 60 these open up. So you've got the yellows at 60. You can maybe get one at level 50. It's not worth your stamina. You don't want to be saddled with a bunch of, blue cards. So I think it's really like level 60 and up, you start getting more and more drops. And that's about when I start caring more about my sets. And so if I farm the other stuff I farmed and, my characters are caught up, and I feel like I've got enough mats in reserve for the next character that comes out in the next cycle that I want to pull in the next couple, then I'm going to sit here and all my stamina is going to go towards these, because this is really the RNG of the game. And you're going to burn through a lot of cards. I'll warn you now. If you're trying to truly min-max your stats, it's not like a one and done sort of a thing. So post like level 60, this is when I start really kind of caring about these. It's even when I start, thinking about using some of my energy pots to refill stamina to specifically farm certain things. And that's it. I mean, that's really the only places you can use your stamina as far as I can think off the top of my head. And so that's how I would focus that down. And that ties right over to, well, then what is my daily routine? And so the way that I handle my dailies is, first thing you want to do is come into the shop. I'm not asking you to spend money, but you will get a free item every single day. So here you go. Again, it's leveling mats, things like that. Every single day that you log in after, the server reset, that's just waiting for you. So come in, claim it, takes 2 seconds as you saw. The next thing I like to do is I'll go into my palace. There we go. And I'm just going to clear out what I can clear out. So I actually haven't been here in a little while, but I can clear out my affinity, because as this grows, I get things like coins. If you care about their stories, you can go talk to them and things like that. So I'll take the 2 seconds to clear that out. And then, you can pop in here, get any coins that you've stored up, things like that. And basically you're just trying to level through the palace. I'll make a separate guide for this, another day, but just clear it out, because those things do cap and you don't want them capped. So again, take your 2 seconds. You saw how long that took me while I was talking. So very, very fast thing to do. The next thing I like to do personally is I come into my tasks. I usually have these running nonstop. And so you want one to be ready for you at server reset, which usually happens because you're going to start like a 14-hour mission or something like that, and it's just going to be done the next time you log in. But worst case, there's always one that's about 15 minutes. And so you can just start this one if you forgot to fill in these different blocks or whatever. And this will fulfill one of your daily missions by accepting or clearing out one of these different items. So again, worst case, you run the 15-minute mission, come back 15 minutes later, or log in on your phone later, and boom, that one's done. Then you want to do your social things. So I pop into the city here, and this is where you can either, up your social stats, work part-time jobs, or where you'll find your confidants to do your confidant missions. Again, I've got another video that kind of talks about confidants and prioritizing them. But basically, you're going to get 5 activity points every single day at server reset. Burn through them. Don't save them. There's absolutely no reason to hoard those things. And you want to build up your confidant relationships, or like I said, different social skills to, again, build those confidants. Check my other video. Come in here, knock out all 5 of those. Or if you are like super, super limited on time, you got 10 minutes to play, just do 3. You need to do 3 to fulfill one of your daily missions. So at the very least, knock out 3 of these things, if nothing else. Then that's going to leave you with your stamina. Stamina, again, fall, just like I said before, go through is there an event? Are there things I need to build for my characters? Are there personas I need to get? But if you're strapped for time, something to know is when you run one of these missions here, or even the personas, when you get to the end of the mission, you can ask it to fulfill more than one. So, if this one here costs me, what is it? I think like 30 stamina. At the end of the mission, I want to say this one you can do 5 or 6 times at once. And so you don't have to like manually play it or even auto battle it, 5 different times. You can say use 5 runs at the same time. And as long as you have the stamina, you can do that. Or you can use as much stamina as you have. It doesn't let you burn the whole pot. So like you can't do, in my case here, all 396 stamina. I'm overcapped right now, which is a terrible thing to do. But you can use quite a few. So if you're strapped for time, pick the one that you need to run. At the end, hit the max button, get as many credit as you can, because you need to clear 120 stamina to fulfill the daily. If you do those things, you would have at that point completed your daily missions. And if you're super, super low on time, you can do all that in about 5 minutes. Honestly, it's probably the fastest dailies I've ever had in a gacha game before. And you only have to do 4. Now, if you're super early in the game and maybe you haven't opened or unlocked certain things yet, perfectly fine. Just check this list. There's going to be other stuff that you can do. You're going to clear one of these just for logging in. So really, you just have to do 3 things. But that's the way that I handle my dailies. It's super fast, super efficient, and it gets me in and out when I don't have time to play the game. And then once you're done with that, it's really just looking at what's going on. Like I said, you want to finish your palaces, you want to finish mementos, you want to get all those, different rewards. You want to work on your confidants. So do you have extra points to burn for that? And then the last thing is, you have this section here, which is quests. And these quests are what are going to unlock most of your confidants outside of like the main story ones, really. Although I think they actually give you a quest to start those conversations. Or sometimes it's just like side activities, but it gives you a ton of experience. It gives you a ton of rewards. So if you're, walking around, you said, I did the palace, I did mementos, I have nothing to do on the events. What do I do now? Check your quest. Chances are you're going to have a few sitting here, at least between content cycle patches. Clear those out. The only other thing I would tell you is make sure you're keeping up on things like your mail. Mail, if you're new to gacha games, you tend to get like event rewards, or you'll get, like developers might say, oh, there's a maintenance, let me give you, some gems, or hey, it's the 6-month anniversary, let's give you some rewards. And so you can come in here and get them. So you can see like I just got a whole bunch of stuff for doing that. So check that as well. It's a nice little daily habit to get into. Matter of fact, I have even more apparently. Oh, we'll worry about that some other time. But that's it. That is my, beginner guide, things to get you started. Let me give you the quick recap, kind of the order of priorities. Day 1, day 2, first couple of days, focus down the story. You want to unlock your systems, and that's going to come through completing that first palace. So really your priority is get that palace done. But when you unlock things like dailies and stamina usage, use your stamina every day. It's a limited resource that refills, and you don't want that capped because you're just leaving rewards and level ups and things like that on the table. So make sure you do that every day. You want to focus every day on your dailies. You want to clear out, those 3 or 4 missions that you need to do up here, because that gives you rewards, and those rewards then fill up this track, which give you more rewards. So get that done. Don't forget. And if you can log in for 5 minutes, just knock those out. On your pulls, just in the early game, really think about who you want. Get that beginner banner done. Pick up An, Morgana, or Yuji, your choice there. And then don't overinvest in the other banner. The game is going to give you a bunch of pulls to begin with, but that's kind of like the gacha trap, is you've got this wealth of stuff coming in to start, and then eventually it will dry up, and then you're stuck to content cycles and what you get every cycle. There's going to be a lot of good characters coming to that standard banner later. I'm personally going to hold quite a bit of resources for that. And then pull the limited character if you want them. Don't feel pressured. It's your game. Have fun. You don't have to be a slave to the meta. But do pull Joker because he's my favorite. So, do it for me. On progress, just remember character levels first, weapons second, skills third, cards focus more after like level 50, 60, somewhere later in the game. And then that last kind of star branch or whatever it is, if that comes with launch, really your last priority. Don't overuse those resources. On Wonder, very simply, build your personas. If you unlock all of your personas, you're getting the points to level his skill and just keep his weapon up to date. Otherwise, his level's capped with your account level. They're tied 1-1, so you can't do anything about it anyways. And then for materials, you're going to farm those through palaces, mementos, shops. They're everywhere. Just play the game. Have fun, but don't skip things. If you're focused on keeping up with event shops and just the content in front of you, at least for quite a few months, you're going to have a lot of things to build into your characters. But also, don't try to build characters you don't want to play. You don't want to dry up your own, material bucket, if you will, on things that you're not even going to use. It's not good in games like this. And then on stamina, again, I would put my priority around, events if they're limited, unlocking personas, doing my weekly, boss fights, and then just building my team. And then that's really kind of it. Those are the things that you want to focus down. And dailies, we just covered it. I'm not going to really kind of get through it too crazy, but just remember, do your tasks, do your palace, do your city stuff, level your confidence. It takes like 5 minutes. It sounds like a lot, but it's really not. That's it. That's my beginner's guide. It's probably longer than I intended it for it to be. So thank you for sticking to the end. And if you're still here, like and subscribe. And if there's something you need or want more depth on, more information on, drop it in the comments below so I know that you want a video for it. And then I can try to make something, specific that you're looking for that will help you out with your journey in the game. Can't wait to see you here with me in a couple weeks. I'm actually thinking about starting a guild that you guys can join. Tell me if that's interesting to you. Tell me if you want a Discord server. We can talk about those things. And I will see you, my friends, in our next video.